The first time my life cracked open, it wasn't because of a tragedy you could see from the outside. It was a quiet moment on a narrow porch in a small town in Ohio when a careless remark from my neighbor brushed against a wound I had spent years hiding. The night air was heavy with summer rain, the street lights buzzing like tired insects, and I stood there smiling politely while something inside me finally admitted how lonely it had been for far too long. That moment, awkward and unexpected, became the spark that changed everything. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, please take a moment to like this video, comment, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that are still waiting to heal. I had moved into the neighborhood 2 years earlier, settling into a modest apartment complex on the edge of town, the kind of place where the paint was peeling but the people still waved. My name is Michael Turner, and at 36, I carried the kind of tiredness that sleep never fixed. I worked long hours at a regional warehouse, stacking boxes by day and stacking regrets by night. My past was full of almosts and maybes, of relationships that never quite became love, and promises I made to myself that I kept postponing. I told everyone I was fine being alone, but the truth followed me like a shadow. The neighbor in question was Rachel Collins, a woman a few years older than me who lived across the hall. She had kind eyes and a laugh that echoed through the stairwell, and she spoke with the blunt honesty of someone who had stopped apologizing for existing. We crossed paths often, sometimes carrying groceries, sometimes waiting for the same stubborn elevator. There was an ease to her presence, but also a sharpness, like she could see through polite smiles. That evening on the porch, her offhand comment landed wrong, not because it was inappropriate, but because it exposed how starved I was for connection and how deeply I feared it. I laughed it off, of course. I always did. Humor was my shield. But later that night, alone in my apartment, the words replayed in my mind, not as embarrassment, but as a question I had avoided answering for years. Why was I still waiting? Not for marriage exactly, but for the feeling that I was worthy of being chosen, fully and without hesitation. I had grown up in Indiana, raised by a father named Thomas who worked himself into silence and a mother named Margaret who loved deeply but worried constantly. They taught me to be patient, to do the right thing, to wait for the right time. Somewhere along the way, waiting became my excuse. Days passed, and the neighborhood moved in its familiar rhythm. Kids played basketball in the parking lot, Mrs. Evelyn Brooks watered her plants every morning like clockwork, and the smell of barbecue drifted through the air on weekends. Rachel and I continued our casual interactions, but something had shifted. I noticed the way she listened, really listened, when people spoke. I noticed how she checked on the elderly tenants, how she left small bags of groceries outside the door of a single father named Andrew Morales who worked night shifts. Watching her made me uncomfortable, because she reminded me of the person I wanted to be but hadn't allowed myself to become. The real challenge wasn't romance, it was fear. Fear of being seen, of being judged for the years I spent standing still. I had once loved a woman named Hannah Reed, back when I lived in Colorado. We had talked about a future, but when it came time to commit, I froze. She moved on, married someone else, and I told myself it was for the best, but the truth was, I had been hiding ever since. Waiting became safer than risking another loss. One rainy afternoon, the power went out across the complex. Tenants gathered in the hallway, sharing flashlights and nervous jokes. Someone suggested checking on the older residents. Without thinking, I found myself knocking on doors, making sure everyone was okay. Rachel was there too, moving with purpose, coordinating rides and handing out candles. Our eyes met in that dim hallway, and for the first time, I didn't look away. There was no spark of romance in that moment, just recognition. We were both tired of pretending we didn't need each other. That night, sitting alone again, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. Waiting wasn't noble anymore. It was lonely. It was a way to avoid taking responsibility for my own happiness. I didn't need a perfect moment or a perfect person. I needed courage. The kind that shows up quietly in small decisions like choosing to speak honestly or choosing to care. Over the next weeks, I changed in ways that surprised even me. I started volunteering at a local food pantry in Dayton, recommended by a neighbor named Samuel Price. I reconnected with my parents, calling more often, listening instead of rushing through conversations. I even signed up for a community college writing class. Something I had dreamed about since my 20s but always postponed. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became real. Rachel noticed. She commented once casually about how I seemed lighter. I didn't respond with a joke. I simply nodded. There was comfort in being seen without needing to explain myself. Our conversations grew longer, deeper, but never crossed into anything dramatic. We talked about grief, about aging, about the strange pressure to have everything figured out by a certain age. In those moments, I understood that intimacy isn't about physical closeness. It's about trust. The turning point came on a Sunday morning when the complex hosted a small block breakfast. Folding tables were set up outside, coffee steaming in the cool air. As people laughed and shared food, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Peace, not the absence of longing, but the presence of purpose. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living, imperfectly but honestly. Rachel and I stood side by side, watching the neighborhood come alive. There was no need to define anything. The connection we shared didn't demand labels. It asked for patience, respect, and mutual growth. For the first time, the idea of marriage, of partnership, didn't feel like a finish line. It felt like a possibility, something that could grow naturally if and when the time was right. If this story is touching your heart right now, if you see a piece of yourself in the waiting, the fear, or the quiet courage it takes to change, please take a moment to engage with this video, like it, share it, and let us know that stories like this matter to you. As the months passed, I realized the comment that once embarrassed me had actually given me a gift. It forced me to confront the truth I had avoided. I wasn't still waiting because I lacked opportunity. I was waiting because I was afraid to begin, and once I began, everything else followed. Before this story ends, I have a special request. Please comment below and share what you're still waiting for, or what finally helped you move forward. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. In the end, my life didn't change because someone chose me. It changed because I chose myself. I learned that waiting isn't wrong, but staying stuck is. Love in all its forms arrives when we are brave enough to be present. And sometimes it starts with an awkward moment on a quiet porch, and the courage to answer honestly, even when your voice shakes.